Over the last few weeks, new Social Security rules have quietly started rolling out. No major press conference, no emergency alert, just changes buried inside government updates that most people never read. And here's the problem: a lot of Americans think these changes don't apply to them. They think this is only for future retirees or other people. That assumption could cost you thousands of dollars. Right now, misinformation is spreading fast. Some people are panicking, thinking benefits are being cut immediately. Others think nothing has changed at all. Both sides are missing the truth. So, today we're slowing this down. We're cutting through the noise. And we're explaining exactly what these new Social Security rules mean, who qualifies under them, and why this matters more than ever in 2026. Because this is happening at a time when inflation is still squeezing households, rent is higher, medical costs are climbing, and for millions of Americans, Social Security isn't extra money, it's survival money. Now, officials are calling these technical adjustments routine updates, administrative changes. But listen to me closely. When eligibility rules change, even slightly, real people feel it. Monthly checks change, approval timelines shift, and some people discover too late that the rules they planned around no longer apply the same way. What makes this moment different is how quietly it's happening. Letters are being sent out across the country today that many people simply do not fully understand, and that is where the trouble begins. When you open your mailbox and find a notice from the Social Security Administration, the language is often dense, the implications are hidden behind bureaucratic phrasing, and the consequences of ignoring it are higher than ever before. At the same time, online portals are updating their terms and conditions and changing the way they display your information without providing any clear explanation as to why these shifts are happening. If you don't know exactly what to look for, or if you aren't trained to spot these subtle shifts in how your data is being handled, you might completely miss the warning signs until after the moment it affects your monthly payments. This is why this situation matters so much to you right now, regardless of where you stand in your journey. Whether you are already collecting your hard earned benefits, whether you are in the middle of planning your claim for the next few years, or whether you are still in the workforce counting on Social Security as a fundamental pillar of your future financial security, these changes are shaping your reality. These new rules aren't just minor adjustments for today. They are fundamentally redesigning how the entire system functions for decades to come. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions or lets anxiety take over, I want to be incredibly clear about one thing right away. Social Security is not disappearing tomorrow morning. You do not need to worry about checks stopping overnight or the system collapsing while you sleep. However, the ground is shifting beneath our feet. The way the system decides who qualifies for those checks, the specific timing of when they qualify, and the precise mathematical formulas used to determine how much they receive are all undergoing a significant transformation. Historically, whenever the government implements changes of this magnitude, the people who end up losing out are the ones who were left in the dark. The people who didn't see the transition coming are the ones who face the most hardship. That is exactly why you're here. In this discussion, I am going to break every single piece of this down in plain, simple English. We aren't going to use legal jargon that requires a law degree to understand. We aren't going to engage in political spin or use fear tactics to get a reaction. We are going to stick to the facts, the hard numbers, and the real world impact on your bank account. I'm going to explain what changed, why the government feels it had to move in this direction, and what you should be paying attention to at this very moment. The truth that most mainstream headlines won't tell you is that these new rules do not hit everyone with the same force. The impact is uneven. Some people might go through the rest of their lives without feeling a single ripple from these changes. Others, however, could wake up to find unexpected delays, significant reductions in their expected amounts, or entirely new eligibility requirements that they were never prepared to meet. There's a smaller group of people who may actually find a way to benefit from these updates, but that only happens if they understand the internal mechanics of the system well enough to take strategic action. In this new environment, timing has become everything. The specific month you choose to file, the exact way you choose to report your earnings, and the level of documentation you have ready to go at a moment's notice are the variables that matter. Small details that seemed insignificant 10 years ago can mean the difference between thousands of dollars in your pocket later. Let's talk about the nature of what actually changed, because this is the primary source of confusion for the average American. When people hear the phrase new Social Security rules, they often imagine a single, dramatic overhaul or a massive bill being signed in the middle of the night. But that isn't how the bureaucracy operates. What we are seeing is a series of highly targeted, quiet rule updates. These updates are changing the way eligibility is reviewed behind the scenes, how every dollar of your income is counted, and how your benefits are verified through automated systems. When you stack all of these small changes on top of one another, the system begins to behave very differently than it did even just 3 or 4 years ago. We have to start with the concept of eligibility. Under the updated framework, the Social Security Administration is taking a much closer look at who qualifies and the exact circumstances of their claim. It is no longer a simple matter of hitting a certain age. They are digging into work histories with a level of scrutiny we haven't seen before. For years, many people operated under rough assumptions. They thought that if they worked long enough and hit the right age, the benefits would just flow automatically. Now, the agency is tightening the screws on how those assumptions are verified. Work credits are being audited with more precision. Gaps in employment that used to be ignored are now being flagged as points of interest, and earnings that once slid through the system with minimal human review are now being cross referenced against updated digital records. This doesn't mean you will suddenly be told you don't qualify, but it does mean that the path to approval is becoming longer and more bureaucratic. Next, we have to address the issue of income, which is a massive point of contention for many. Under these newer rules, the way your income is counted, especially for those who are still working while trying to claim benefits, has been adjusted in a way that favors the system's bottom line. Certain types of earnings are now weighted differently in the calculation. Some income sources are triggering automatic reviews much earlier than they used to. The thresholds where your benefits begin to be reduced because of your earnings are being enforced with a level of strictness that is unprecedented. In the past, people could sometimes exceed these limits, and the consequences wouldn't catch up to them for a long time. Today, the enforcement is faster, more automated, and less forgiving. If you're working a part-time job, doing freelance work on the side, or earning any kind of supplemental income, your margin for error has basically vanished. If your income reporting is even slightly incorrect, even if it was a total accident, the system won't send a polite warning. Instead, the correction will come in the form of a reduced check or a repayment notice demanding money back. This brings us to the sensitive topic of age and timing. While the official full retirement age hasn't jumped to a new number overnight, the incentives and the penalties surrounding your choice of when to claim have definitely shifted. The system is now being more aggressive in how it reviews early claims. The formulas used for delayed claiming are being tightened, and the overall flexibility that once existed in the benefit formulas is being stripped away. In the simplest terms possible, the system is now designed to reward extreme precision and punish those who rely on casual assumptions. If you claim early without a 100% grasp of the long-term impact, that reduction in your lifetime wealth becomes almost impossible to undo. If you decide to delay, you still get the increase, but the paperwork and the verification steps required to prove your status are becoming more burdensome. We also cannot ignore what is happening in the realms of disability and survivor benefits. These areas are seeing some of the most noticeable and frankly unsettling changes. For those applying for disability, the medical documentation standards are being enforced with a rigidness that can be overwhelming. Reviews are becoming more frequent, and periodic reevaluations are happening much sooner than they used to in many cases. This isn't a mass purge of the system, but it is a clear signal that approvals will take longer, and the quality of your evidence matters more than ever. For survivors and spouses, the eligibility calculations are being updated to reflect new standards for household income coordination. People are finding that their benefits are starting later than they expected, or that the amounts have been recalculated based on data they didn't even know was being tracked. So, why is the government doing this now? The official explanation is always about the long-term sustainability of the program. They point to the fact that more people are retiring than ever before, people are living longer lives, and healthcare costs are spiraling. They mention that there are fewer workers paying into the system compared to previous decades. According to internal projections, the trust fund is under immense strain. Instead of doing something politically explosive like cutting benefits across the board, The approach is more subtle. They tighten the eligibility, they improve the enforcement, they reduce the errors, and they slow down the approval process. From the government's perspective, this is how you protect the system. From your perspective, it feels like the rules of the game were changed while you were already playing. The most unsettling part for many is that these changes aren't being rolled out with a big announcement. They are happening in phases, trickling down through the bureaucracy. Some updates only affect new applicants, while others are triggered when an existing account undergoes a routine review. This creates a situation where two neighbors in almost identical financial situations can have completely different experiences with the Social Security Administration. One person might have a smooth application process, while the other, filing just a few weeks later, runs into a wall of delays and recalculations. That unpredictability is the new normal. Now let's look at what is not changing because it's important to stay grounded. Your monthly checks are not being canceled. The cost of living adjustments, or COLA, still exist to help with inflation. The system is still functioning every day. But the margin for misunderstanding has shrunk to almost nothing. The days when you could just set it and forget it are fading into history. The rules don't announce themselves loudly. They show up in the fine print of a routine letter or a notification on your online dashboard. If you ignore those signals, you won't realize the impact until the money in your account changes. The phrase the government loves to use is modernization. While that sounds harmless and even positive, in practice it means more automation, more digital cross-checking, and significantly less human discretion. Systems and algorithms do not care about your intentions or your personal hardships. They only care about the data points. This leads us to the ultimate question: what does this mean for you personally? Understanding that the rules have changed is only the first step. The real work is understanding how those rules interact with your specific life, your specific income, and your specific timeline for the future. We have to move past the idea that this was one dramatic law. It is a shift in the very culture of the Social Security Administration. It is a move toward a system that is an ongoing verification process rather than a one-time checkbox. Your work history, your earned credits, and even your gaps in employment are now part of a living record that is being scrutinized more often than you might think. The enforcement of income thresholds is perhaps the biggest shock for people living on fixed incomes. When a system becomes automated, it catches discrepancies in real time. In the past, you might have had a year to fix a reporting error. Now the system flags it instantly, and the correction is automated. This lack of a human buffer is what makes these new rules feel so much colder than the old ones. It's also why documentation has become the most valuable asset you have. Whether it's medical records for a disability claim or earning statements for a retirement claim, the burden of proof has shifted more heavily onto the individual. As we look toward the future, these rules are not a temporary phase. They are the new operating manual. In the coming months, more people will receive those routine-looking notices. More decisions will be finalized by software rather than by a caseworker you can talk to on the phone. This means your next steps are critical. You have to check your records with a level of detail you've never used before. You have to ensure your work history is accurate to the letter. You have to be proactive about reading every single piece of mail that comes from the administration, even if it looks like junk or a routine update. The biggest financial mistakes in this new era won't come from people trying to cheat the system. They will come from good people who simply assume that the rules stayed the same. Social Security is a promise, but the terms of that promise are being rewritten in the fine print. The people who stay informed and who take the time to understand these shifts are the ones who will be able to adapt and protect their standard of living. The people who ignore the quiet updates will be the ones forced to react when it's already too late to change their strategy. You are already ahead of the curve by paying attention to the details today. Knowledge in this system isn't just power, it is financial protection. As these changes continue to unfold and the phases of modernization roll out across the country, staying informed is the only way to ensure that the future you worked for remains secure.